Hello, this is Jamie Show, and we are back from an episode of Libertarian Censored podcast, going over all the posts on Libertarian Censored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have YouTubers are almost too easy to dupe from theatlantic.com by Slayer991, and that's an Atlantic article about how no wonder Russia finds its usefulity, it's extremely online. And yeah, I would agree with that. There are a lot of people online who are more than willing to sell out to anyone as long as they get their money. And I personally think that's a decent mindset. So, you can try and uphold your values, but ultimately, the financial stability is ultimately the bottom line for a lot of people. So yeah, if someone said, "Oh, I'll give you $1 million if you say certain things," I would take the money personally. I personally don't really care for, Russia or China, but, if they're willing to pay money for, you to say something, I think you should be able to say it. I think that's free speech and freedom to contract and freedom of association. And that's my thoughts on that issue, The U.S. government pays people, the U.S. government has propaganda as well, but no one seems to care about that. It's only when a foreign government does it that they seem to care. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump explains how tariffs work. We are going to be a tariff nation. It is not going to be a cost to you. It's going to be a cost to another country. From CH Warlocks, and that's crosswords from the March Against Nazis subreddit. And yeah, I personally am against tariffs. It does end up being they go against the free market, and they do ultimately end up being a cost more on the people who are of the country who have them than the people who don't have them. And I think it's well-intentioned. I think a lot of protectionist economics is well-intentioned, but, it seems like something that seems good, so it'll encourage people to buy homegrown, but, when you force something like that, it's not natural, and that's, I think my big problem with that. We need to live naturally. We shouldn't have things like tariffs or taxes or any government involvement in the economy whatsoever. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have great moments and unintended consequences from Reason TV on YouTube from Muddy Max, and that's a new video that Reason put out. And yeah, I definitely do think a lot of stuff like it talks about like how price controls for meat in 1946 and new LED lights for in Japan and how they got snowed over and covered up by snow and no one could see them. And then yeah, ultimately I think all like usual, a lot of policies people present are well intentioned, but that doesn't mean they will have good results. And I think that's a very big libertarian lesson a lot of people need to learn. That just because something sounds good on paper doesn't mean that it will be good in reality, and that's my thoughts there. Then we have, should parents be held responsible for the violence committed by their children? From Lemon Limelight, and they said, some backer from the New York Times, the 14-year-old accused of slaying 2 students and 2 teachers on Wednesday at Appalachia High School, where he is a freshman, faces 4 counts of felony murder and convicted to serve life in prison without parole. His father, Colin Gray, 54, who faces murder and manslaughter charges, is accused of allowing his son to have access to the military-style rifle used in the shooting despite knowing he was a threat to himself and others, according to arrest warrants. It's rare for parents of shooting suspects to be charged with crimes, but prosecutors have shown a growing willingness to try to hold them responsible in high-profile cases. This year, the parents of a teenage school shooter in Michigan were convicted of manslaughter. The couple, James and Jennifer Crumbly, were the first parents in the country to be directly charged for deaths caused by their children in a mass shooting. Generally, what do you think of are the proper considerations for holding a parent liable for the children's crime? That is, what facts, circumstances each should be examined, and more specifically, how have recent school shooting cases, the Crumbleys, which have been through a trial, and or Colin Gray, which is in its infancy, address parental liability in ways that will achieve real justice. And my thoughts on that are, ultimately, I do think, if someone does shooting, they should be held accountable for it. But, I don't think that means the parent should be held accountable. The father did gift the kid a gun, even though he knew he had problems. But, he didn't shoot up the school, and we need to hold people accountable for their actions. That's what personal responsibility is all about. I personally don't think he should have been given his kid a gun, but ultimately, the Second Amendment says it shall not be infringed, even if they might be a dangerous person, and I think that's important to remember as well. Ultimately, I think he deserves to be the son deserves to be charged for shooting, but I don't think the father deserves to be charged, even if he probably should have known better. Then we have, as the election approaches, there seems to be an increasing presence of left-leaning trolls dominating Reddit discussions, from Olu was a gunner, and that's the self-post that they made. Nice, and yeah, that seems to be Reddit usually though, so I don't think that's too out of the ordinary. Reddit's full of all these leftist midwits, and they really seem to be a bit more prevalent around election time. But that being said, they're always pretty much there, and that's my thoughts on that. Then we have, so Trump is the Libertarian nominee from Plasma and Ferdy, and they said, if you look at the other Mises Caucus-dominated subreddits I've been banned from, it appears every Libertarian will be voting for Trump, and a bunch of comments about how horrible a candidate Chase Oliver is. What a sad state this is. And, ultimately, I don't think Trump's that libertarian, but I think if libertarians want to justify voting for him or Kamala Harris, I think they should be able to. With that being said, don't be surprised if other libertarians don't think that either of those people are libertarian. Then we have Libertarian National Committee votes on whether to endorse Rage Against the War Machine rally from Baton 13. That's crossroads from the Libertarian Party USA subreddit. The Libertarian National Committee is voting on whether to endorse Rage Against the War Machine, the anti-war rally scheduled to take place in Washington, D.C. later this month. However, the party has already been included on the event website for at least 2 weeks prior to the vote, and then they link to the Independent Political Report. And yeah, I personally think they already said that they're going to sponsor it, so I think they should probably endorse it. Everyone always says it's Russia, 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 but they say all of Senate all is Russia, 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 so who really cares anymore? And yeah, I personally would support the rally, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have A. Aaron Knows from EasyCZ75, and that's a crossword from the 2A Radical subreddit. What does AR stand for? A. And then Aaron says, Armalite rifle. And yeah, I know my mother was talking about how she says we can stop all these shooting screens if we ban AR-15s, but I think, that's just what the TV says, the TV says, oh, we need to ban this one gun, and then all shooting screens are shot, but that's just how they move the goalpost until they take away all your guns whatsoever. Ultimately, sometimes tragedy does happen, but that's not an excuse to disarm law-abiding citizens. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Government Honors Living the Religious Prophet from CH4 Locks, and that's crosspost from the ex-Mormon subreddit. From the Salt Lake Tribune, Utah Governor Spencer Cox declares Russell Nelson Day as LDS leader turns 100. And I personally think we need to have the separation of church and state there, but ultimately, the state's in a position to declare whatever day it wants, and that's why I'm personally against having any state-enforced holidays, whether they be more traditional holidays like Christmas or more modern progressive holidays like Juneteenth. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Welcome to Canada, The Doctor Will Kill You Now from Lemon Limelight. And they said, from the Wall Street Journal opinion section, Welcome to Canada, The Doctor Will Kill You Now. Canada's undergone a crash course in which the country calls medical assistance is dying or made. The experiment began in 2015 when the Canadian Supreme Court ruled in Carter v. Canada that laws prohibiting physician-assisted dying interfere with liberty and security of people with grievous and irremediable medical conditions. Parliament codified the decision the following year. Lawmakers thought they were imposing limits, so we did not wish to promote premature death as a solution to all medical suffering. Then Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould said, the plaintiff's lead lawyer in Carter argued that in almost every case, doctors will want to help their patients live, not die. Some subsequent amendments dropped safeguards, such as the 10-day assessment period between request and provision. It's also proposed mental illness as an eligible condition, the implementation of which the government has delayed until 2027. The message for everyone else remains the same. If you want to die, you needn't wait. The Consequence, Ethics, and Public Policy Center from Alexander Raykin notes in a new study, and what was meant to be exceptional has become routine. Using 2 government data sets, he estimates that the program is at least the 5th leading cause of death in Canada, claiming it reported 13,241 lives in 2022, up from 1,018 in 2016. Mr. Raykin notes that the government believed doctors won't merely rubber stamp applications, yet in 2022, more than 81% of patients resulted in death, including for vision, hearing loss, and diabetes. He documents that the percentage of denied written requests has been falling for years from 8% in 2019 to 3.5% in 2022, even as the number of applications has increased. The upshot has been that 44,958 people have been put to death between 2016 and 2022. One estimate published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2020 predicted that approximately 2,000 euthanasia cases could be expected annually. The May total that year was 7,611. Roger Foley, who suffers from a degenerative neurological disorder, cerebral ataxia, has witnessed MAID since his infancy. In 2009, as Mr. Foley's condition worsened, he was put placed in a mental health ward. I became extremely suicidal, Mr. Foley says. After he shared his thoughts with staff, he says it began to float the idea of euthanasia that alarmed him, so he began to record conversations secretly. In one, a hospital ethicist threatens Mr. Foley with denial of insurance coverage and says it would cost him north of $1,500 a day to stay in the hospital. When Mr. Foley protested, the ethicist retorted, "Rogers, is not my show. My piece of this was to talk to you about how if you had an interest in this, it's dying." He didn't. "I have a lot of pain every day," he says, "but you can't give up at the point of any problem. You still value. Your life is value. Canada's healthcare system must not only give him up on him, but to compel him to give up on himself." Then they added, "The right to die is a fundamental liberty, but third-party assistance raises legal and ethical concerns, which leaves considerable room for different approaches. Is Canada's made a good model to follow, how is it compared to those in other states and or countries?" And I personally think, if people do want to kill themselves or want to have the state kill them, I think they should be able to do so. But with that being said, I personally think Canada's made it too easy to do so, as the article pointed out, and I personally would like it to be a little harder, but ultimately, people will justify what they justify, and I think if people do want to kill themselves, that's on them. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Argentines rush to deposit cash savings as part of Malay policy from batimes.com.ir from Ninja Lover. And yeah, I personally like a lot of Malay's economics, but it is kind of sometimes you do have to let's see, dollar deposit surged 40% to US $19.8 billion since it took over December 20th, being the highest level since 2019. So yeah, I definitely would deposit my cash savings with how volatile it sounds like the economy is in Argentina right now. Then we have Trump promises no tax on Social Security benefits if he wins the election from FoxBusiness.com from Donald Key, and that's cross-sourced from the conservative subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't think we should have tax on anything. With that being said, I still don't like Social Security because I think it's a Ponzi scheme, but it's not a Ponzi. But the government has allowed to run Ponzi schemes since it has the force to do so, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Argentina inflation seen at 31-month low of 3.9% in August from Reuters.com by Ninja Lover, and it's good to see that Malay's economic positions seem to be working. That's my thoughts there. Then we have The Real Issue from GoComics.com by Baton13. And that's the Pearl Sports Swine comic strip by Stephen Pistache for September 10th, 2024. And one guy's talking to the other guy. "Did you hear what they're doing with these gender-neutral bathrooms? Yeah, what's happening in this country?" And then the rat says, "What's happening is that good middle-class jobs that used to be in this country were moved overseas for the benefit of hedge funds and corporations far richer than you. Together with their captive judges and politicians, they are part of an elite class who has been significantly more powerful. The rest of us argue over bathrooms." Someone had to say it. And I would agree with that. I would say the entire culture war is manufactured by the elites of big business and big government to divide people. Will they continue to rob us blind? And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, does tonight's debate matter from Plasman30? And they said, is any debate going to change anyone's mind? Anyone voting for Trump at this point is committed. I'm sure we'll see senile men for president shirts from people tomorrow. I'm glad debate is happening, but I'm sad by the fact that there is nothing that's going to change the mind of the average Trump voter. And I would agree with that. I don't think the debate mattered too much. People who like Trump before us are going to like Trump, and people who like Harris before us are going to like Harris, and that's my thoughts there. Then we have, I can't believe I'm writing this, no J.D. Vance, immigrants are not eating pets, outlandish xenophobe lies from Esquire.com by CH4Locks. And yeah, I personally do think, they did that the immigrants might be eating pets and geese. I heard, based on evidence I've seen. But, ultimately, if they want to gaslight us into thinking otherwise, they should be able to do so. But with that being said, ultimately, even if they aren't eating them, it's still important to keep tabs on what the immigrants are doing, because people seem to let immigrants get away with anything these days, especially if they're illegal or undocumented, because that's the in-group for the left, and they let anyone in the in-group go away with pretty much whatever they want to. And that's my thoughts on that issue. It's also interesting. I saw something interesting that it's interesting because the left wants to document seemingly everything, but they're completely fine with undocumented immigrants. Look at how they can treat immigrants compared to guns, and you can see that they only support undocumented immigrants because it helps them when despite supporting documented everything else. Then we have presidential debate Fred Harris-Trump from Donald Key. and I didn't watch the debate. But if I wanted to watch two people two people jerk off, I would just watch porn. I said, but yeah, I do hear that the moderators were kind of biased against Trump, and Harris might have been wearing a wire in her earring, and that's something that I think it's important to note. But with that being said, I also heard that Trump, he didn't look too good either, and that's important to note as well. And yeah, ultimately, I don't even know why we even have debates anymore. People can just circle jerk online for forever, and I think that's probably better than what we have for these debates. I think it's time to kill off debates and just let people circle jerk to themselves. Then we have how the debate fell tonight, and it's for the South Park debate 2004, the giant douche and the turd sandwich, and only instead of debate 2004, it's the two's written over the second zero, so it's debate 2024. And I would agree with that very much. They're both awful candidates, and some people might consider Trump to be worse, some people might consider Harris to be worse, but they're just gonna either way. You're just gonna get stabbed. One candidate will stab you in the front, the other will stab you in the back, and that's very much what politics it is. And we have why it seems this sub is full of Harris and Democrat supporters from Immortal Sauce, and they said, likewise, Libertarian meme seems full of Trump supporters, and I'm no way a Trump supporter. I believe my issues with Trump are what got me banned from Libertarian meme. Lots of users here seem to rush to defend Kamala when someone suggests that both her and Trump are garbage. So why are there lots of Harris and Democrat supporters here when both of these groups support anti-liberty libertarian policies? Genuine question. And my thought is that, Reddit's naturally going to be left-leaning because that's how it seems to be unless it's strictly moderated otherwise. And yeah, ultimately I think the Reddit rules kind of increasingly make it hard to question the official DNC narrative at all without getting banned. And that's something that I also think is important to note. And let's see if there's anything else. It looks like that's it. And I think we're going to wrap it up there. And that's my thoughts. And that's, I'll see you guys next episode. Bye.